Greetings. My name is Cassaundra Smith, and I'm the team lead for Isle of Trust, a project for the 2022 Spring-Summer Computer Science Capstone at Portland State University. I'm joined by team members Eleanore Clark, Dimitri Dumont, Alvin Iskender, Blake Stevens, and Jeremiah Tilse. Isle of Trust is an interactive web game conceived of and sponsored by Dr. Moshe Rachmuth at Portland State that demonstrates certain ethical and social principles to students, namely how to spread an idea to those around you ethically and efficiently. Our hope is that through the use of this game in an educational environment, students will better understand how their actions can influence one another, and will inspire them towards making the world a better place. We'll talk more today about the project itself, but first I'm going to turn it over to Blake for a demonstration of the project.
Hello, I'm Blake, and I'll be taking you through a demonstration of our game, Isle of Trust. Here on the setup page, the player makes some customization to their gameplay. These choices include aesthetic options for the player's avatar, as well as choices which affect gameplay mechanics. First, and for appearances only, players must choose a hat and a face. Just stick with that one. Now for the face, we'll go with that one. Player then makes choices affecting gameplay mechanics, choosing an ideology and a difficulty. Each of the 7 ideologies listed correspond to a strategic profile based on game theoretic principles and are briefly described here. A more in-depth explanation of the way these principles are used in-game can be found here. This is a basic tutorial page outlining the game's process and describing some of the mechanics. This page can be viewed at any time during gameplay from this menu right here. Well, we'll just go with the Hawk ideology, which, as you can see, Hawk is selfish and always cheats. Now, the difficulty selections correspond to the player's starting resources. Resources are essentially the game's economy. They deplete over time and can be gained or lost through interaction with other agents on the map. And we'll just stick with easy. Now let's select a map and start the game. The different map types serve the purpose of altering the complexity and structure of agent interactions. We'll just stick with default choke, and then we'll start. The game is split into 3 sections, 2 informational sidebars, and the map populated by randomly generated agents. The left sidebar displays a player's resources, an account of their actions, their reputation, their mood, and finally the influence allocation options. The right sidebar contains much of the same information about any selected agent, and we'll just select our only neighbor here. But as you can see, it also contains statistics about their interaction with the player and how they feel about the player. Currently, it feels neutral about us, so let's change that. For the first round, we'll allocate some of our resources to attempt to influence our neighbors. Let's just do 2. Now I'll submit my choice and we'll see all interactions take place on the map at once. Okay, what just happened here? Each agent went through a series of actions and reactions with each of their neighbors. This series includes making a choice of either cheating or giving, a net change in mood based on how they were treated, a net change in resources, an attempt to influence their neighbor, and a potential to change their ideology to match a neighbor's. If we have a look at our neighbor that we've selected, we can see that they still feel fine, still feel neutral about us. So let's do another round or 2, see if we can change that. And this time, keep an eye on the interaction between our player and the selected neighbor. And we'll stick with 2 resources. So we both cheated, moods dropped, we had a net loss, they had a gain, and that's that. So now you can see that the neighbor's feeling toward us is still evolving. It currently dislikes us but feels neutral on our ideas, which suggests that they are not very influenced by us. So we'll play a couple more rounds just to see how the rest of the map plays out. Ah, okay. Looks like we have exhausted our resources and our player has died. When an agent dies, it remains unplayable for 3 rounds and is then repopulated by a new random agent. That's it for the demonstration. Thank you for watching.
My name is Eleanor, and I'll be covering the overview and features. What we really wanted to do with Isle of Trust is create an interactive simulation of social contracts of human relationships. We wanted to show the importance of cooperation and outreach. What happens if you act altruistically in your social circle, and what happens if you don't? What if you really reach out and spread your opinions, making sure you're understood? On the other hand, what happens if you isolate yourself? This is obviously a pretty soft goal, but that makes it appropriate for our primary audience of guided humanities students in an academic environment, whether in the classroom or at home. We have 4 main features. The first and most fundamental is the prisoner's dilemma framework on which our game is built. The second is the AI and its ability to make choices and strategize. The third is our influence system, which allows agents to convince each other to change their strategies, and the fourth is map variety. Our main feature is the framework of the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is an ethical thought experiment that explores a two-person relationship. If both people act altruistically, they're modestly rewarded. If both act selfishly, they get nothing. But if one person is selfish while the other is altruistic, the selfish person is strongly rewarded while the altruistic person is punished. Isle of Trust is unique because it explores this dilemma at a community scale rather than the scale of a single pair. Another significant feature is the AI. The choices agents make in Isle of Trust depend on strategies poached from academic game theory, such as Hawk and Dove. These strategies depend on the agent's underlying moral values, generosity and forgiveness, which change depending on the environment the agent is in. This simulates real human behavior in a pared-down way that is easy to explore from an ethical perspective, such as the perspective of a professor showing this game to his students. A third significant feature is the influence system. Now, the influence system is one of the more important aspects of Isle of Trust with regards to simulating human behavior. Agents may spend their resources to influence their neighbors, nudging the neighbor's moral values to be more in line with the agent's own. The more influence the agent gains, the more likely it is that their neighbor will adopt the agent's values and strategy altogether. In real life, for better or worse, some people are leaders while others are left behind. Isle of Trust intends to simulate these unequal power balances we see in reality. The final main feature is map variety. There are 5 unique maps, all of which introduce their own unique concepts. For example, look at the map to the right. Notice how the green agent in the center has an outsized impact on this world. The maps in Isle of Trust are intended to make the player think about what our connections do for us in real life. We also have 2 other notable features, one of which is character customization, in which you can choose the way your pawn looks and what strategy you start with. The other is the written tutorial, which introduces new players to the game. Now, in terms of future goals, we would like to have better ways to explore relationships between agents. Right now, it's easy to explore your relationship with your neighbors, but it's not easy to see your neighbor's relationship with their own neighbors. We'd also like to improve the UI. Right now, it's a little clunky and a little text heavy. Ideally, it would be a little bit more intuitive. We would also like to create an interactive tutorial mode. Right now, you have to read the tutorial, but it would be a lot nicer if you could play it instead. We would also like to be able to create initial starting scenarios. Isle of Trust is intended to be a little heavy on the roleplay, but right now every agent in the map is generated with the same number of starting resources, the same mood, the same influence on each other, and the list goes on. Ideally, starting scenarios could drop the player into something that is, from a role-playing perspective, an ongoing story.
My name is Dimitri Dumont, and I'm here today to give you a brief overview of the architecture behind the Isle of Trust. So in the planning phase, we spent a lot of time as the team researching what would be the best framework to use for our project. We eventually landed on TypeScript for its structural advantages over JavaScript, and React as a framework for its modularity and ease of development. We also knew that both of these tools were highly used in industry, and we wanted this project to be as professional as possible. Throughout the development process, we used a variety of tools and resources. For our package management needs, we used Yarn and NPM. For formatting, we used Prettier and ECLinter to help maintain a repository-wide formatting standard, which was extremely helpful for a code base being contributed to by a number of people. The styling was done, of course, in HTML and CSS. All our 2D animations that really bring our project to life and make it visually appealing to play was taken care of with the Canva library. We stored some of our static data for our maps, for instance, in JSON files, and all of our hand-drawn assets were made by a couple of very talented people on the team. To give you a brief little preview of some of the modularity that React Framework allows and simplicity of use, most of our elements were one-to-one represented by just a single TypeScript file, for instance, our start screen and our game board itself. And things like our enemy agent AI were just able to be contained in single TypeScript files, which really helped with ease of development. And yeah, that was a brief preview of our architecture. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alvin Iskender, and I'll be speaking about our development process and contributions briefly. So, one of the unique challenges of our project was the level of design work required in this one. A large portion of the early work of our project, the early big steps, were all planning and design. We had to do research into the game theory of the project. We had to draw out design documents for what the interface would look like, for what the game would look like. The details of the gameplay loop were a very long point of discussion. And so on. And it was an evolving collaborative effort between ourselves and the sponsor and his feedback that continued throughout the life of the project. So it continued past those early steps, and we kept iterating as we went on. So in those later steps, we were iterating on our design elements, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't, and just continuing on implementing the major features we set out to do so that we would have a functioning product by the end. So one of the early challenges as well was finding the best way to apply each of our talents. So in the early days of the project, we would have goals that would be laid out for each sprint, and team members would either be assigned to do one of those goals, or they would volunteer to do them, and we would try to get these goals done by each sprint. But as development progressed, we incorporated more of an issue-based system. So all of us contributed to the issues in GitLab. These were unimplemented features or bugs that needed to be fixed, or something along those lines. And we would assign them to ourselves or not assign them and just chip away at them. Each time we got the chance, we went at our own pace and just tried to get those issues done. And so once they were addressed, we closed them. We worked on our own branches and merged them. That was sort of the process, closer to the end. When we first started working on this project, the group was split into two teams. We had a design and coding team and a team that focused solely on the coding of the game. Eleanore, Jeremiah, and myself were part of the design team. Cassaundra, Blake, and Dimitri focused on the early coding. This setup did not last too long. This was mostly for the beginning of the project. As time went on, all team members basically contributed everywhere in both design and code. That was just what worked for us. And in addition, special props to Eleanore for creating the majority of the game's adorable artwork.
Hi, my name is Jeremiah Tilse, and our next section is on the unexpected events of the project. First was the evolution of the project. Some members of the team had a pretty good idea of what the prisoner's demo was based on our studies. And each time we met with Moshe, new ideas for the project emerged, adding new components or changing concepts. Each time the team would pivot and adapt to the new ideas. Since these events took place earlier on in the project, they had little impact other than changing the size and scope of the end product. Second was our sponsor's vacation. With limited communication, the team continued on with the work based on the most recent feedback, doing our best to follow the vision already presented, which brings us to the next section, sponsor feedback. Moshe was always pleased with the visual design concepts and prototypes we brought to him. He also had great feedback on the game mechanics, taking what we brought forth and adding new ideas and suggestions for new concepts, leading to the evolution of the game. As communication became limited, there was less feedback. The team moved forward with what we knew, and at times we made decisions on our own based on the information already at hand.
After nearly 5 long months of working on the project, we've come away having learned several lessons. First, and perhaps most importantly, was that we should have identified the key features of our project sooner. The nature of our project was such that, beyond the broad strokes of what we hoped to make, we didn't have a great idea of what was most central to the success of the project. Having identified these key features, we could have made smaller, more efficient prototypes, and would have been able to iterate much quicker. Instead, we often worked from the bottom up, focusing on the implementation over the actual features. We also found that aiming for smaller, uncontroversial changes made our development move a lot quicker, since other team members didn't have to wait so long to receive changes. This was especially important in the last couple sprints of our project. Finally, web games are hard. Our project is heavy both on text and graphics, which means that we couldn't fully commit to a particular web paradigm. In retrospect, it might have been best to use something like a game engine instead. Finally, I just want to say a tremendous thank you to everyone on our team for continually stepping up to get this project over the finish line. This couldn't have happened without you. Special thanks also to Moshe Rakhmith for sponsoring this project and sharing his wisdom wherever possible, and to Bruce Urban for providing guidance to the Capstone teams this cycle. Thank you for watching.